Now, unless you've been hiding away for the last couple of years, you've no doubt heard about Momentum, the campaign group set up to support Jeremy Corbyn. Owen here is a high-profile supporter and is involved in some of Momentum's campaigning. Yesterday, we reported on Momentum's new political objectives document, which is asking prospective parliamentary candidates to sign. It got a few in the party a bit irked. One Labour MP tweeted that Momentum was like a Stalinist cult. So is that true? Or is the criticism overblown? We can hear Owen laughing there. Today's Times reports that some Labour councillors around the country are being deselected or pressured to stand down in favour of candidates more sympathetic to Momentum's aims. The infighting is particularly intense in Haringey in North London. One of the councillors there, Tim Gallagher, says there is an aggressive purge happening in the local party. He added that the atmosphere is inflamed with division, distrust and what at times feels like hatred. Meanwhile, the founder and chair of Momentum, John Landsman, is running for a place on the ruling body of the Labour Party, the National Executive Committee. At Labour's recent conference, Momentum successfully pushed for a change to Labour's leadership election rules, which means that in future, candidates running to lead the party will only need the support of 10% rather than 15% of Labour MPs. But John Landsman said that the changes to the rules don't go far enough. He also wants to see further changes in the Labour Party, in particular giving members more influence over policy making. Momentum says it has 31,000 paying members and a further 200,000 supporters. Many think that the organisation played a key role in helping Jeremy Corbyn and Labour to gain seats at the election back in June. With us now is Richard Engel, director of the centre-left pressure group Progress. Welcome to the Daily Politics. Owen Jones, are you concerned by reports of an aggressive purge, particularly in Haringey in London, which I just outlined, where councillors who don't support Momentum are being deselected or encouraged to stand down?
Utterly ludicrous. Look, firstly, Momentum, can I just say, played a historic role in that election, and I hope Richard would agree on that.
We're going to come to that in a moment, but let's just deal with the Haringey, because this is someone's own testimony saying that there was an aggressive purge.
This is not a purge, it's about democracy. It's about members being able to decide which candidates Labour puts forward to represent the party as councillors. Now, you've seen a handful of examples in Haringey, and I should just point out about Haringey what a thriving democratic party it is. In Hornsey and Wood Green, which is half of Haringey, do you know how many people are members of the Labour Party, of the electorate?
No.
1 in 14 voters are members of the Labour Party. It's a thriving democratic party. The problem in Haringey is the Labour Council is proposing a mass sell-off of council housing and of public land that is opposed by both the MPs there, including David Lammy, who is no Corbynite. I don't think anyone could claim he was. It's opposed by both the constituency Labour parties. Some of those councillors who support those proposals, then when they come up for selection, which is the normal democratic procedure, there has been a handful of them where members themselves democratically have decided that they would like to replace them with somebody else.
All right, well,
they might be disappointed about losing elections. People always are. But that is democracy.
Right. Is this democracy in action or a purge?
Well, you've clearly got this happening around the country. It's a pattern taking place. You know, the first woman leader of Leeds Council has been triggered in her local party, and that's a city that's only ever had 2 women MPs for Labour in its whole history. You've got this happening in Manchester, where the former Mr Gay UK has just been deselected. You've got a young black lesbian woman in Southwark where this is taking place. There is a pattern across the country, Owen, and this is now going to come to our Labour MPs potentially down the road. Our Tory opponents don't have to deal with any of this. They're having to deal with difficult challenges. And what you've talked about in Haringey, one I think isn't true, but you've fallen for George Osborne's trap. He wanted to impose big swinging cuts on local government so that Labour people would take it out on Labour councillors rather than a Tory treasury. And that is what Momentum, not its membership, who did work incredibly hard in the election, you and your unseat campaigns, those members are working really hard. But the Momentum leadership is taking this out on Labour councillors for decisions made by George Osborne. Why are you falling for their trap?
I have to say, that attack... Well, firstly, in terms of falling for traps, it is very disappointing, if we're talking about factional manoeuvrings, for your faction to go to the Murdoch press and try and portray... That's what's happened with the Times this morning. And to portray...
All of that stuff's in the public domain. It's just
to portray democratic...
Journalists are allowed to write up what's on the internet.
Let me finish.
Owen, you do it regularly.
To portray democratic selections by members as a purge. It's not. It's democracy in action. Your own honorary president, Stephen Twigg, who I happen to like very much, by the way, he himself won his seat by deselecting.
He had
yes,
no
he did.
role in the deselection
He deselected
at all.
Bob Waring, a left-wing
He had
MP.
no role
yes,
in that.
Yes, he did. Your faction, that's what they did.
That's not true.
Steve, let me just finish. Let me finish, Richard. In terms of Momentum's record and diversity, it's excellent. At the moment, they have 3 candidates standing for the NEC, 2 women from minority backgrounds, and a Jewish man.
But why are they deselecting people that are already in position? It's not so much about the diversity issue, it's about trying to get rid of people who are representing Labour already in these areas.
Grassroots members of the Labour Party, in a handful of instances, actually, it's not even that widespread, but let me finish. They've made themselves a democratic choice. Look, if you get selected as a candidate for the Labour Party in any position, that is a huge honour. But that doesn't mean you have it for life. Whatever you do, members have the right to judge you on your record and on your values. If they themselves democratically decide that they would prefer somebody else in their place, that is their role. And for you to portray that as an undemocratic manoeuvring, when Labour now, I have to say before 2015, in many places, local Labour parties were husks with very little activity, with councillors selected with very few members. Labour now is one of the biggest parties in the Western world. It is a thriving democratic party.
All right.
And that will mean that some candidates will be replaced.
And we'll come on to how they've managed to swell the numbers for the Labour Party. But let's go back to Haringey, because your point saying you accused Owen Jones of falling for George Osborne's traps. But do you accept that in the instance of Haringey, where Owen Jones says it was a matter of democracy of local members, there was a great strength of feeling against what the council was proposing?
Of course there was, and people are entitled to have a great strength of feeling,
Right.
but one, it has been misconstrued, but secondly, this is exactly what George Osborne wanted when he put big cuts on local councils, because this isn't just
Richard,
happening in
can I ask you
Haringey.
just quickly?
It isn't just Haringey.
Hang on, let him finish, and then you can come back to you.
But it isn't just happening in Haringey. This is what the Tories wanted.
Right, but in Haringey, what is wrong with local members and local people saying we don't agree with our representatives backing council proposals to make swinging cuts? Whoever you want to blame, that is democracy.
Other than Joe, they have no choice. Ultimately, they can't run deficit budgets. They can't run illegal budgets, which some of these people want them to do. But also remember in Haringey, when they put a cross-party motion to the council on tackling anti-Semitism, there were people, some of which were Labour Party and Momentum members, that were in the chamber hounding those people and threatening them with deselection if they voted to tackle anti-Semitism in their borough.
I have to say, the leader of Momentum, the most prominent figure of Momentum, John Landsman, is Jewish, as is Jay.
But does that mean there's no tone of hatred, as has been said by this young Labour councillor? I mean, Gallagher says he doesn't want to stand again in Haringey because the atmosphere there is poisonous, inflamed by division, distrust and what at times feels like hatred.
I think what we're seeing are candidates who are very, very disappointed that their brand of politics, if you like, is no longer in the ascent, that there is now a mass democratic party full of people, full of enthusiasm, full of optimism.
And full of hatred, he says.
Not hatred, that's just not true.
OK, well...
And just on that, just quick, I have to say, look, I looked on Richard Angel's Facebook wall, I have to say, before I came on, where you criticised me, you didn't attack me, but your fellow travellers were leaving personal abuse. I'm not now going to...
They shouldn't do that. I'm not absolutely clearly.
I'm not going to make a political point and somehow say this is, represents your faction's politics. The vast majority... The vast majority of people, of members, as I think you would accept, who have joined the Labour Party, are decent, honest,
I already said that.
optimistic
the people I met from
Absolutely.
Well, let him answer. Hang on. Let him answer that. You've set out your thought.
People I campaigned with in Momentum all around the country. I went to 30 seats in that snap election, and they were brilliant people. I really enjoyed getting on with them. We talked. We disagreed about things, but there is something happening in the leadership here that is actively supporting this to happening. You've now got this loyalty test that you've got to sign up, not just to the 2017 manifesto, but any revisions as Momentum decide them in the years to come. And Momentum doesn't practice what it preaches. It doesn't have internal democracy properly. They've just decided who the Momentum candidate in Corby is by having no ballot of Momentum members, by just a small group of them picking. That happened in Stevenage, it's happened in Harlow.
I would say
on the loyalty test, let's do the loyalty test. I mean, we had a discussion. Yeah, you can before the end. But bearing in mind, Richard brought up this loyalty test. We talked about it yesterday. Do you think you would have passed it at all stages in recent history? I mean, back in spring of this year, after Labour lost the Copeland by-election, you called for Jeremy Corbyn to resign. So you would not have met that contract that was set out by Momentum that says you must support all the objectives of Jeremy for leader.
Let's just discredit your entire point. Yes, after voting for Jeremy Corbyn in both leadership elections, I was very publicly disillusioned after that by-election result. So if Momentum are a totalitarian cult, why am I working so closely with them across the country in campaigns? The fact is...
Because you're more powerful than
Momentum,
they are, Owen. You've got more followers than they are.
That's not true. Momentum is a very, very broad church of members who are united by wanting to have a radical socialist government to build a socialist society in Britain. And the truth, just on the loyalty test, can we just knock this out the park? It's not. Momentum, like Progress, are supporting candidates in internal elections. Progress, I have to say, are far less democratic internally than Momentum are. Yes, they are.
Don't say things that aren't true, Owen.
What
Progress does, which I'm very proud of.
Why are they undemocratic? Why are they undemocratic? And then I'll get him to answer it. Why is Progress undemocratic?
Progress is a tiny group in comparison to Momentum.
Yeah, but why is it undemocratic?
Because Momentum have thriving democratic local groups across the country, which democratically select their own boards.
But they're not doing
that. Yes, they are.
But Richard, why are you so much smaller then in terms of numbers?
Compared
to Momentum? I mean, in a way, you have to accept that they have been hugely successful in terms of getting new members, in terms of injecting enthusiasm, and your branch of the party are running scared.
I don't think we're running scared. I think we're recognising that our politics is feeling at a low ebb and we've got to renew ourselves.
Well, why is that?
Well, because clearly people think that some of our ideas have run their course and that people can't move on from the last Labour government.
They have, with all due respect.
But you're allowed to think that, but I'm also allowed to believe what I believe and try and renew my politics. Progress is twice the size as it used to be. We are actually a growing organisation. But importantly, let me make this comparison, because you tried to insinuate stuff that wasn't true about our organisation. What Progress does in selections, which we're very proud of, is provide training for people so they know the process. It is so difficult. Labour makes it cloaked in secrecy wherever possible, and we try mentors for people doing it. We don't donate money to campaigns, we don't design their leaflets for them, and we certainly don't get together local groups to say, look, you've got to pre-select a candidate. What we do is try and support as many people with Progress politics, and any member of the Labour Party can join Progress.
Why do you want an ideological flat pack mould, which was one of the quotes? I mean, do you want everybody to be saying exactly the same thing on exactly the same issues so that there is no deviation? Is that the point now of Momentum? Is it discipline to get your man into number 10?
I have to say, during the general election, I campaigned across the country with Momentum, including for MPs who, frankly, have completely different politics from myself and from Momentum. And Richard knows
should they be deselected?
No, I'm not calling... No, Momentum aren't calling for their deselections. That's just not the case. In terms of this so-called loyalty test, just to correct the record there, Momentum are supporting certain candidates, and as trade unions and other organisations do in those circumstances, they're asking those candidates who want to be backed by Momentum to sign up to their values. There's nothing wrong with that. And just quickly on that...
The former head of compliance for Labour said that might not be complicit with the rules.
I remember being active in the Labour Party when Tony Blair was leader. And I have to say, the atmosphere then towards people of my politics was often bitterly hostile. We were blamed for, in the past, destroying the Labour Party. I was called a trot and everything else under the sun. And the reality is now the Labour Party is far more open and far more democratic than it's been for at least a generation. That is a welcome thing, but it will mean elements of the old order who believe in what many people now believe is a failed orthodoxy. They will find that other people now who've joined the Labour Party will maybe replace them. And that's a healthy part of democracy, Richard.
Richard, finally, I mean, Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party did far better than many people expected, even within the Labour Party itself. So do you accept that the values and the policies that are being espoused by Jeremy Corbyn in that manifesto struck a chord?
They absolutely did struck a chord, but what also struck a chord was that in that manifesto, it aligned economic security and national security, almost the best of Jeremy Corbyn and Tom Watson. But in days after the election, Jeremy Corbyn went to Glastonbury and said, we're still going to get rid of Trident. So that was an important part of that coalition of keeping that together and getting the British public to get...
He didn't do that.
All right,
and that is really important.
Well, let's just put Trident to one side very briefly before I let Richard go. In the end, Labour was still 2 points behind the Conservatives. They did do much better. 20 years ago, Tony Blair came in 12 points ahead of the Conservatives. In order to win, do you not have to be in that position of Tony Blair and a more centrist Labour Party to win an election, not just do better?
Absolute rot. And in fact, those who support Blair's politics on the continent are doing far, far worse than Labour sister parties. And I should just say, just quickly, Labour got 40%. The New Labour, of course, at their peak got 44%.
But the Conservatives, of course, did well in terms of vote share.
Just quickly, Labour started on 24%, within 6 weeks ended up with 40%. If Labour go into the next election with 42%, what many Tory MPs fear, not least because of Momentum's campaigning, because they had a critical role in depriving the Tories of their majority, that the only way is up. And that is why, because of Momentum, Labour did far better than any of us expected.
And the only way at
we
this
should all pay
point, I'm
tribute to
afraid,
that.
is we have to end it. We've run out of time. But Richard, thank you very
Only
much.
some of that were true.
Now, we'll have a rematch. Now, it's...
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.